Welcome to TESO Consulting Group's DEI podcast series, Why Is It So Hard? Shining Through the Shadow of Resistance. I'm Dr. Tonya Breland.
And I am Erika Lee.
We're back.
We're back.
Welcome.
Yes, I'm Erika.
And I'm Tonya. We flipped the script on you a little bit there.
Yeah, we did. Yes, we did. And this is our podcast, as many of you know. Why is it so hard? Shining through the shadows of resistance. And in our podcast, what we really try to do is just talk about issues that prevent us from being socially just and free. The goal is for us to be the change we want to see in a society where, we've successfully addressed marginalization, discrimination, and oppression of all forms.
Yeah. And so today our topic is, drum roll please, why ignoring race does more harm than good. So we're going to talk about something that has a name that many of you have heard of and may not think is actually a problem. Because I often hear people say, well, didn't Martin Luther King Jr. say not to judge, people by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character?
Yes, he did say that.
However, people take that and they misconstrue it and misuse it in a way that validates not having to see someone's race.
Yeah. Another way you might hear this is, and we hear this a lot when we present on diversity, equity, or inclusion of some kind, people will say to us, I don't see color. I don't see color. I see a well-dressed woman in front of us, or, I don't see color.
Yeah.
And that's a bit of a challenge for us, to be quite honest.
It is a bit of a challenge. You see, this whole concept of color blindness really came about as, like, there was an intention behind it that was, really supposedly good.
Right.
And the intention was, if you just, see people according to people and not make distinctions, and this whole concept of we live in a melting pot, which essentially is everybody comes here and they assimilate, if you will, which is a whole nother concept and conversation. And, we just all become one.
And we do the same things and we live the same way and we have the same experiences and we speak the same language.
Right.
And we have the same perspectives.
Right. And so if you see somebody's color, then that's going to be a problem.
Right.
Fully ignoring the fact that you absolutely see our color. Okay.
Absolutely.
So you can't play like you don't see us.
Yeah.
I know when I walk into a room, you see a black woman.
Absolutely.
Period. Like, I know that.
Yeah.
So you can't pretend like you didn't notice. I didn't notice you were black, Erika. I had no idea. Oh my gosh, you are?
I don't know why you wouldn't notice that.
Right, exactly.
You know,
because I am clearly a woman of color.
Right.
Clearly.
But I think it's interesting, what you said about sort of the genesis of this. I think maybe it was in a good place, right? The idea that I try to treat people the same regardless. And while that is noble, the truth is that people have differences.
That's right.
People have differences. So
let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, we have differences. And so to not notice the difference, so me being African American, like my skin color, my culture, the way I speak, my hair texture is very much a part of me.
Right.
It's very much a part of me. So if you don't see that, then you don't see me. You actually
say that all the
can't
time.
see me, because that is a part of who Erika is.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so to say that I don't see color is actually a refusal, if that is true, and it's not.
It's not.
But it's actually a refusal to see, what may be a difference between you and me. Even if you are African American and you say, I don't see color, like there are differences between, the way I present as African American and the way you might present as African American.
Sure.
And so to not see that, like for me, there's real value in being Black and being African American.
Absolutely.
There's real value in my skin color and my hair texture. There's value there. And so to say, like, I don't see that, it really does say, like, I don't value something that's really important to you.
Right. Or a really important part of you, a part of who you are. I don't value that. I don't see it means that it doesn't exist to me.
That's right.
It's kind of like I think it was Shark Tank. So there was, I can't remember all of the names of the people that were in Shark Tank, and I haven't watched it in a long time, but I would watch it like pretty religiously years ago. And one of the guys on there, if the people rejected his offer, he would say when they walk out, "You're dead to me." And so you're dead to me. And really, it's almost like saying that this part of who we are, that we identify as, and that we value as part of, what makes us Tonya and Erika, is, like dead to someone else.
Yes.
It's like, kind of like that, like your race is dead to me.
Yeah.
And I know that's not necessarily people's intention when they talk about they don't see race, but really that's kind of what it's all about. And I want to talk about this difference piece for a minute. So society has great value, or greatly values, sameness, commonality. It's like, if we can just find the things that make us the same,
that unite us and bring us together.
Right. Then it's kumbaya.
Yes. Yes. And I can see the human in you, and you can see the human in me.
Right. And we can just get along.
That's right.
And not have any problems whatsoever.
Any problem. That's what society needs more of.
Right.
Right.
Right. They think that that's the way to go.
Yeah.
And we're here to push back on that narrative because we believe that seeing the differences in one another is what brings out value.
That's right.
Long gone are the days of feeling like we have to fit in.
That's right.
Now we should be in a place where we are able to belong based upon our differences.
That's right.
Not what's the same about us.
That's
so
right.
we often talk about that when we go out and train.
Yeah.
We even try to help people to understand the uniqueness and the differences that lie in people.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, none of us are the same fully.
That's right.
We share many commonalities, but there are aspects of your personality that are vastly different from aspects of my personality.
That's right.
There are talents that you have that I don't have, and vice versa. And I celebrate that in you, and I want that to be seen in you, because that's part of what makes you you.
Sure.
The differences that you have.
And I think really seeking to find the commonalities actually for me is almost it's a bit egocentric, isn't it? So if I'm only
because what lens are we using?
That's right. If I'm only looking for what I see of myself in you, that means I'm only looking for myself.
That's good.
Right?
That's good.
I'm only looking for myself. And so if I can actually really appreciate the difference, right, that we have, like, first of all, I can learn something, right? But then I can appreciate what somebody else has that I don't have, and be fully okay with, like you said, their talents and their gifts that I don't possess. But if I go around looking for those commonalities and I'm looking for myself, it's a really kind of egocentric lens to operate in.
And it's also, we call that term centering.
Yeah.
Like something is centered around you.
Yeah.
Like you don't ever want to be the center of attention, or at least we grew up thinking that you don't want to be the center of attention.
Yeah,
You don't want that.
Right.
Because that wasn't viewed as something positive. Yet what we see when someone says to us that I don't see your color, and I have had that told to me.
I know.
this year even. I mean, we're not talking like when I was a kid.
Right.
I mean, this year it's
Yeah.
been said to me multiple times, like, I don't even see your color. I said, well, then you don't see something that's
right.
really very much valued in me.
That's
They
right.
can see my identity as a woman, you know, but they can't see my identity as a Black person. Like, come on.
Right.
Like, you know, like,
Yeah.
so what are you really centering here?
Yes,
You know, like
that's
my
right.
Blackness is very much a part of who I am, and I am proud to be a Black woman.
Right.
Because as a young child, my parents instilled the pride in who I am as a Black person, and so that needs to be valued.
Yeah.
You know, not centered, not how you see me is centered around how you see yourself.
Sure. I wonder if some of the color blindness in terms of claiming not to see race or claiming not to see differences, I wonder if some of that it comes from people just not really being comfortable.
Yes.
So
Yes.
years ago, there was I think I've shared with you before, there was a Murphy Brown episode. I used to watch Murphy Brown a lot, and there was a Murphy Brown
about that
episode,
show.
and there was like a boss, I forget, maybe a managing director, or he came in and he was African American, he was a really tall African American man, and the crew did not necessarily like him, and so they kept saying things like, well, it's not because he's Black, but I just think that he is, you know, yeah, it's not because he's Black. They kept whispering Black, like it was just the funniest
like
thing.
It was a secret.
Right, like it was a secret, you know. And so I think eventually he came in and made some announcement about being Black, and everybody was like, you know. But I think sometimes it's people don't have the language. They don't have the language to talk about race, and because of that, they don't want to even say it.
Right.
They don't even want to say it. They don't even really want to acknowledge that it is a part of the world, really, or at least what's happening now in their circle. And I do wonder about that language piece. Like I'm just not comfortable with it, so I don't want to say it because I don't want to say the wrong thing. We hear that a lot.
Right.
We hear that a lot.
We can't say that.
Yes.
Like, you know, like, oh, that's a Black person.
Yeah. Right.
You can say it. I'm Black. I know I'm Black.
Right.
I woke up Black.
Right.
You know. So
Right.
It's not a secret, you know, and it's okay.
Yeah. And I think it's what we do with the idea of somebody being Black. So are you ascribing certain attributes?
That's it.
Right? Are you ascribing certain attributes? And I think even that, I think people realize, maybe they realize, okay, there's something wrong with that. I don't know what to do with that. I'm not sure how to address it. So I'm just not going to deal with color at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And we so society. Let me
Okay.
say this again. Society has also conditioned people to not be comfortable bringing up race.
That's right.
So, you know, it's taboo to bring up race.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, here are the things you don't talk about in polite company. You don't talk about politics, you don't talk about religion, you don't talk about money, and you don't talk about race.
That's right.
Just
Those
don't.
are my top 4 too.
Yeah, that's what, you don't do that. And if
Yeah.
you talk about it, people are going to, they're going to eventually walk away.
Yes.
Because
and you risk your social capital.
Yes.
Right? You risk your social capital when you talk about these topics. And, you know, which is unfortunate because I don't know if you realize this, but we're living in a pretty divided society, and people are divided along those those lines. And so when we don't talk about it, we perpetuate the division.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
We perpetuate it. We maintain the status quo.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then think about children. So, you know, if we can't talk about race, when children are coming through school and, you know, in our state, 60% of the students in the school system are students of color.
Right. That's right.
And if all of their teachers have been conditioned, because 83% of teachers are white, so if they've been conditioned that race is impolite, to talk about race is impolite, then what are they doing? What's the harm that's being done to the children of color who who are coming through their classrooms.
And how can I ever appreciate anyone's differences?
Right.
If I'm not taught to appreciate and value and discuss it,
Right.
how can I ever get to the point where I don't feel like, I don't want to say the wrong thing? How can I get to the place where I say the right thing and feel confident about, making friendships and differences?
Right.
How can I ever get to that place
Right.
if we don't teach them when they're young?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, because ultimately it's sending a message of, I don't value you, and I don't value that part of your identity.
Sure.
And as a young child, that young child receives that.
Yes.
Representation matters,
Sure.
And it also matters in the conversation. So, we know that there are more and more books and resources that are available that that show students themselves, and there are schools that are on top of that, that are doing a really good job ensuring that they have libraries that are representative of their diverse student bodies. And, in those cases, kudos to those school districts.
Yeah.
But we also know that if it's something that a teacher can't talk about or feels uncomfortable talking about because of how they've been socialized, or because they're not given permission to have these conversations, then there's going to be harm that comes to that child, because there's a part of them that is going to be either erased or just devalued or ignored and not valued. And what does that do to a child's self-esteem, their self-concept? Do they begin to think, well, so that's where this whole concept where like there's self-erasure that occurs with children, where they're like, well, I'm not accepted as a person of color, and so maybe I need to try to assimilate to be more like who is accepted. And if I try to be more white, or and that even saying that is controversial.
Yes.
But we know that there's a faction of society that feels that they have to prove that they can be white enough to be accepted, if you will, or white-like, if you will.
It's funny. It reminds me of, I think we read a piece, I think it came out of NACI, right? And they were talking about...
NACI is the National Association for the Education of Young Children. Right.
And so they were talking about culturally responsive classrooms. And one of the things, it always kind of sticks out, they were talking about stations in a classroom. And I think there was a book about hair, about black girls' hair, and I can't remember the name of it. But one of the things the teacher did was there were like dolls and opportunities for kids to explore with different hair textures, right? How awesome is that?
That was awesome.
Because I don't know that, as a black girl, I ever saw my hair texture represented in any part of the K-12 experience, right? Yeah. So imagine now, these, African American children, but also Hispanic children and white children really being able to touch and talk about and even manipulate like different textures of hair. What a great space for conversation, and what a great space for differences, right? Appreciating differences and honoring differences. I thought that was just so wonderful. So there are ways to do it. There are spaces where we can just honor the difference and learn how to value and just learn about, what other people experience and how other people live. Right. But I think if we continue to go through this life of, I don't see color, and I'm looking for the sameness, I'm looking for, what other people have that I have, I think we miss the beauty of that tapestry of difference.
And it's almost like you now have created a wall around you, and last time I checked, walls divide. So, you think about a house, you put up a wall, it divides a room. So, you've got distinct rooms because of a wall. And when we think about a wall around a person, if that wall is up, then you don't have to you can keep this divide between you, because as long as I don't have to see you for all of who you are, then we're going to always be divided.
That's right.
Always. That's just how it's going to be.
Always.
And sadly, I think people think that if they don't talk about color, then it makes them less biased. You know, and there was a study with the that was published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, and it found that people who espoused colorblind beliefs were more likely, not less likely, to exhibit implicit bias. So now we've talked about bias a couple times. You know, rather than people who acknowledged it, you know, so there's really a big difference. So when we ignore race, we essentially can reinforce certain biases.
I mean, that makes sense, right? If you ignore any illness, it gets worse, right? If you ignore anything, it gets worse. And so if we ignore our bias, it's going to get worse. If we never talk about it, it's going to get worse. It's going to be reinforced, right? And everything, the lens that we have is going to reinforce whatever our biased notions are. Like, that's just what happens. And so by not talking about it and not acknowledging, you know, I can remember having a conversation with a white friend, and her just saying, like, just asking me, because we were in a safe space, her just asking me about Black people. And I said, okay, so I'm not every Black person, but I can tell you my experience, right? And that was fair, right? That was and we were just able to have.
Because, first of all, no race or ethnicity is a monolith.
Right.
So
that's right. That's
we
right.
need to know that up front. So just because you talk to me and I tell you my experience, it's not necessarily the same as Erika's experience.
That's right.
It's not necessarily the same as the next person's experience.
That's right. Even though, you know, and she asked me everything from like hair to food. Like, I've always wanted to know. I've always wanted to know. What a great conversation that was.
Yeah, I can imagine.
What a great conversation, you know. But again, we talked about this in a previous podcast, but relationship matters.
Yes, it does.
Relationship matters. And so does, you know, the space where we can safely talk about these things, right? That matters. But relationship is huge, you know. And I think I would start in the space of good relationships. In fact, you know, if you have a friend or, you know, a coworker or colleague that is of a, you know, a different race or different culture, or, you know, speaks a different language, like, have a conversation about the difference. Have a conversation about the difference. And sometimes it starts with food, right?
Yeah, right.
So
It's
lunchtime,
non-threatening.
it's non-threatening.
Yeah.
And
people aren't afraid to, like, you know, try something different in terms of food.
That's right. But start in a space that you feel, you know, is safe. And it's okay to ask questions. I think it's okay to ask questions in spaces where there's relationship and safety in that relationship.
Right, because when there's not that relationship, it could seem judgmental.
Yes.
It could be misconstrued.
Yes. Right.
You know, it could be the kind of interaction that's very stressful.
Yes, absolutely.
You know?
And just misunderstood, right? So you might be trying to really find out about, you know, what's different about their experience from yours. And like you said, it just may not be taken very well. So our recommendation is, you know, start with a friend, start with somebody you know, start with somebody where there's relationship. And if there isn't,
but you might have to develop a relationship.
You might have to develop a relationship
outside of your culture and outside of your race and ethnicity.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. If there isn't, if you don't, if your circle is not diverse, right, then yes, you might have to develop that in some ways. I always think about work, but I think there are plenty of places where work is not diverse. So
right.
You know,
That's true.
But I mean, really, sort of. But you know, you find what you're looking for. So if you're, you know, looking for, you know, diversity in your circle and in your day-to-day routine and operations, you should be able to find it. Yeah.
We've asked people in training sessions to write down their top 10 closest people that's in their world that they care about deeply, and that they're comfortable sharing, you know, secrets with, if you will. I mean, not secrets, but, you know, personal things with. And you know, they'll write their list. You know, who are those 2 of those top 10 people that are, you know, that you know, feel are really close to you. And So now write down there, how many of them share, what was it?
I think we had them write down their race.
Right. What's the race of all the people?
Gender.
Yep.
I think there was
Their
religion,
education.
Their education. Yes.
And their religion, right.
Yeah.
And so if you were to make your list of your top 10, people that you
And we
feel
encourage you to
closest
do that.
to, and then you look at who's on that list, so, how many of them share the same ethnicity as you, how many of them don't, or race, or gender, or religion, or
I feel like there was something
education,
else. Yeah.
whatever it is. Like, look at that. That gives you some insight into who your circle is.
Sure.
And whether or not your circle is diverse. Now, there may be some of you that can do that, and you've got people of all walks of life who you find yourself being particularly close to.
Yes.
And I think that's great. But I think a lot of us may not have that on our list.
Yeah.
May not have that diversity on our
And I
list.
think it's worth expanding, the diversity. I think it's worth it. I think it's worth, having people that you have access to that are different from you, that have different perspectives and different experiences. That's the only way we start to appreciate difference. That's the only way. It's hard to appreciate. Now, we get no group is a monolith, like we said, and there are certainly differences within your group.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is sort of be in this space where, we're able to truly appreciate difference, and we do that by having those diverse experiences and networks.
Right. Because when we don't do that, the harm that's done, people are isolated.
Yeah.
People may feel that they're not valued. People may feel like they don't belong.
And they can't show up as their authentic selves.
That's it.
They can't bring the difference that they have in them that is really important and special and unique. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you find that people that are around you, or even you, don't want to see color, we highly recommend that you challenge them and challenge yourself if that's your issue. And that you begin to think about the value of seeing people for all of who they are and all of how they identify themselves.
Sure.
Because I think that that's where we begin to develop the kind of relationships. That's where we can break down these walls that exist in society. That's where that polarization that we have could potentially go away, where we don't have large amounts of people on one end or the other, but rather we have people who are able to unify based upon our differences, because there's value.
That's right.
In our differences.
We said at the beginning of, in our intro, we usually make a statement about the goal of our podcast, and it is around disrupting systems, but it's also around us being the change that we want to see in this space, and that's a part of it.
Right.
That's a big part of it, and so we invite you to, if you've kind of realized that maybe your circle isn't diverse, maybe you don't have this space where you have different perspectives, we invite you to join the effort, right? And then let us know, how did it go? We would love to hear. Yeah, we would love to hear about your journey. We would love to hear about this effort that you're undertaking. So let us know, and we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you in one of our later episodes. So I'm Erika.
And I'm Tonya, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.